John Verrico. Really enjoyed my conversation with John. Fascinating background. He was a slight in stature, young man, 110 pounds, 5 foot nothing. But he, used that as fuel. He joined the wrestling team and, turned it around. Now he's a coach, but he helps people with communication, motivation, resilience, and balance. And it's really around working with people. If you're a business, you're certainly in the people business. You have to have great employees. You have to treat them well, so they'll treat your customers well. And really great conversation, all circled around that. He has an acronyms for the word team. First one being trust. I don't know. I wonder if you'll be surprised by the rest. The other is torch. And again, the first T is for trust and what they mean and what his principles are around. He gives these challenges on social media every month where he has his followers do a certain challenge. One was when we talk about it, I bring 4 or 5 of them up that I really liked, was changing the position of your desk to get a different view of the room that you're in. We have some great stories about that, about making a change and changing perspective and how that improves. But just a great conversation. And he spent 20 plus years in the military. Why did he join the military? He needed more discipline. He was doing some things in his life where he was working late and he needed to change those. And so he joined the military to be more disciplined and some other offshoots of that. Great conversation. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Excited to talk to you. John Verrico, great pleasure to talk to you. I appreciate your time. Is leadership born or is it taught? Is it learned?
I would say absolutely that it is learned. It really is one of those kind of skills that you develop as you come along. I mean, there are people that have natural charisma,
Mm,
but that doesn't necessarily make them a leader, although charismatic people tend to be, looked at as leaders. But I would say that true leadership skills are something that you learn. I know I learned mine. I don't not consider myself a natural born leader. I learned mine. I learned mine in the Navy.
right,
But those kind of skills are. I mean, we all learn from the people that we are around,
right.
right? We learn from the people that we're subject to. So as we go through life, we've had, maybe parents and friends and other relatives and bosses, and some are good and some are not so good, and you learn from them. And it's ultimately you decide which behaviors you're going to emulate.
Mm,
And I chose to emulate those behaviors that made me feel like I mattered to the people that I was dealing with. And so those were the kinds of behaviors that I wanted to emulate as I grew in my leadership skills. I wanted to make sure that people that I worked with and people around me always feel as if they matter.
mm. So you didn't specifically go out and seek to be a leader. It just happened in the people you associated with and in your career, your experiences.
Can I go back a bit? So I actually started out, I was a extrovert living in an introvert's body because
Mm,
I was an undersized kid in school. I
right.
was 5'3", weighed 110 pounds. And that was when I graduated high school at the age of 18. So I was the little kid in school that got picked on by the bullies. And so anything I did that would draw attention to myself meant I was going to get beat up.
Mm,
And, I tried to do things that would help me fit in, but I was a lousy athlete. So, so much for that. I could tell all kinds of stories about, trying out for the different sports teams and getting laughed at, and, being a bench warmer in the soccer team, and, ultimately being told by the coach of the wrestling team that, I wasn't going to be wrestling unless I got in that weight room and worked out.
mm,
So I went in the weight room and worked out. And there's all these gorillas in there on the bench press, and I walk in there, little pipsqueak me, and I'm going to go, excuse me, can I use that for just a moment? Can I just borrow the bar? No, in reality, what really happened was I went off into the corner and not drawing attention to myself, and I sat on the leg press for my hour every day. So what happened was my legs popped. I had these enormous, massive, muscular Popeye legs, and I had the upper body of olive oil.
mm,
I was like stick arms and concave chest, and I was this little scrawny thing. So, ultimately I had a talent because my legs were so strong, I couldn't be pinned. I got to kick out from underneath anybody, but I didn't have the upper body strength to hold anybody down. So, I became known as the mighty mosquito. My claim to fame was that I wasn't ever pinned. But,
mm,
so we take our wins where we can, right? Um, but no, so I wouldn't say that I was out to target becoming a leader, but what I was out to do was to make sure that nobody else was made to feel that the way I felt when I was a kid.
mm. Yeah, it looks like we both have something in common there, John. I've been told many times that I'm handsome from the waist down. So I guess that was similar to you with big legs. Uh,
Yeah, well, I've been told I've got a face for radio, so there we go.
and now, of course, you've turned into this double X Adonis.
I'm glad you like my term. So true, so true. I've certainly not. I never went past 5'8", but I did get a little bit taller. But yeah, I've more than doubled my body mass over the years. So yes, I do refer to myself as the double X Adonis.
Yeah, yeah, one of your great phrases. You've got great content, John, up on the site, and you kind of have these challenges that you pose to people, which is really cool. And I wanted to talk about a couple of them that I really, really liked, and I look forward to adopting and challenging. Learn a new word today. Use a new word as much as possible in your vocabulary. Then a new one tomorrow. Where'd you come up with that?
That actually goes back to something I learned from my dad. All right, my father was a blue collar guy, hardworking guy his whole life. He had to quit school, before finishing high school because his
Mm,
father had passed away when he was still a kid, and so he went to work to help support his mother and his siblings. So he was and he whatever needed to be done, he would do it, right? Even if he didn't know how to do it, he would go out and learn, right? If somebody needed a house painted, he would go and learn how to paint a house just so he can go and do that and earn some money to support the family. He went and learned how to drive a truck just so he can, again, find a job and to bring food on the table. So
wow.
dad always encouraged us. He said, learn something new every day.
Mm,
I don't care if you finish school or not. I would prefer if you did, but learn from everything every day. The world is just a mass of experience. And so just get out there and don't tell me you don't like that food. Try
mm.
that food first, right? Don't look at that person and say you don't like them unless you've given them an opportunity to prove themselves.
Mm.
So everything was about, just absorbing every experience and learning something and bettering yourself every day. So, sometimes it's learn a word, sometimes it's meet a new person, sometimes it's, try a new food or go a new place. And so that's just been part of my DNA my whole life.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
now I like to spread that around and help people to learn something new every day.
Yeah, and
You,
you're really good at it. So you provide coaching and workshops in communication, motivation, resilience, and balance. That's quite a quadrant there.
and it all actually fits together. If
Mm.
you think about it, communication skills are really important skills to have for any leader, right? And it's all about our interactions with other people. Everything is about our interactions with other people. No matter what business you're in the people business, right?
Yeah.
So our lives are really, I don't want to say dictated, but they really are led by the people we surround ourselves with and how we treat other people. And so all of this helps us in the long run, right? If we know how to treat people, we know how to work with people, we can be good leaders. We know how to communicate with people, we can be good leaders. If we are resilient to change, we can help others get through and struggle through that change. And if we have good balance in our lives, we can help those around us be balanced as well, because being balanced helps you to survive change and deal with all kinds of
Mm.
adversity. And then that helps us to communicate better and become better leaders. So it all really interacts with each other. I mean, the core foundation of all of what I teach is really about relationships with others.
Yeah, and being, running businesses, you're in the people business regardless. And operating in, you know, like you were saying, just moving around in our life, in our world, we still have to interact with people, even if you're an introvert, even if you're an ambivert, even if you mentioned that you were an extrovert in an introvert's body, I think you said.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you still, you still have to have relationships with family, with friends, with people at the grocery store. You still have to communicate. And it's easier to navigate, or it's less difficult to navigate once you understand and are patient. You mentioned before, don't say you don't like somebody until you give them a chance. It's really important. Another one of your challenges: seek feedback on your skills and performance, and ask for advice on improving. And then you give a tip: ask feedback ahead of time.
Yes. Yeah,
Very
because we
cool.
wanna
How did you do that?
you know, it's kind of a challenge, but the whole idea is when you're going into a project, right, you need to or whatever it is, we need to understand what the expectations are. We need to understand why we were selected to fit into this particular thing. When we first got online, one of the first questions I asked you is, "Hey, you reached out to me and invite me on your show. What made you decide to do that?"
Yeah.
I had applied for a director job at an organization I worked at a number of years ago, and I didn't get it. Instead, a younger, much less experienced person had gotten the job. Now,
Mm,
I could have got all, in a fluster about it, but I went to the person who did the interviewing and was doing the hiring, and I said, "What do I need to do?" I put it on myself. What do
mm,
I need to do? What skills do I need to have? What do I need to change in myself to make myself a better candidate the next time a position like this comes around?
mm.
And that was probably one of the most important uh,
Hmm.
discussions I ever had in my career, because I got some really good feedback about what I needed to do. And it wasn't about the skill set. It wasn't about,
Mm,
the schooling that I had taken. It wasn't about my experience. I had all of that. What it was about was the fact that, well, I was a master chief in the Navy, right? So master chiefs are used to pushing back on the leadership for the good of the organization and saying, "Hey, boss, this is not a good decision." Well, this was a government organization I was working in, and it was an an appointed official who was in charge of the organization. And they said, "Hey, we realize that you've got the benefit of the organization in mind, and that you're just giving us advice to do things right, but sometimes government people don't want to hear from an underling that what they want to do is wrong." So it's like,
Hmm.
okay, so I had to learn how to temper that a little bit and allow people to make a mistake every once in a while.
Very interesting. And the way you frame that, you didn't go back and yell at them and slam your fist down and say, "Why didn't I get the job?" You just said, "What do I need to do to be better qualified to get it next time?" It's you're reframing it in a respectful and manner to get the feedback that you so needed.
Right. And put it all back on myself. When I'm
Right.
interviewing people for a job or when I'm interviewing interns or whatever, I do very similar. I ask a very similar question. I say, before you walk out the door here, I'm going to ask you two questions. Number one, what is it that you're going to want when you go down the hall and you're going to say, "Ah, I forgot to tell them this." What is that one thing? I'm giving you that opportunity.
Mm.
But the other thing is, I ask them very clearly, answer this question. Don't hire me if you're looking for blank.
Hmm.
And I have them fill it in and they make them think, right? Oh, I don't want to tell them not to hire me. But then when they
Right.
think about it and you realize, okay, if you're looking for a slacker, don't hire me, right? So I'm looking for that kind of that critical thinking skill. But when I was interviewing for jobs, before I walked out the door, I would ask this question. What is the one thing that you wish you had heard from me today that would help me get this job?
Hmm. Yeah, I remember. So I started my tech business in the '90s, and I would do similar things to that. I would say to the candidate, if you were me, what would you ask me? Or and I would completely outline, by the way, here's what success looks like in this position.
Yeah.
Clearly define what it looks like, and tell me about that. It's again, these are people skills that you talk about. You've got great
You know,
acronyms, John, and
wait,
one is for team, TEAM.
yes, yes.
I don't want to say what they are. You know what they are. Please tell us.
Sure, sure. So the team acronym is really just how teams need to work together, right? So the first factor of all of that is trust, right? Because a team cannot function if the members don't trust each other. And actually, let me tell this in the perspective of an organization that I had worked with a number of years ago. Okay. So it was a research and development organization, and the boss put 10% of the budget aside towards projects that he was pretty sure were going to fail.
Right. Google does
And,
this. Yep.
and he said, look, this is what research and development is about. If you can be successful in this, it will be a game changer. If not, we will learn from that. So he removed that fear of failure
Mm.
from folks. And people worked 10 times as hard to try to make sure that project worked. But
Right.
here was what it was. Basically what he said was, I trust you to do your best.
Mm.
And they trusted him not to come down on them if the project didn't work, right? So that trust, that mutual trust was really critical. The second piece of that is he empowered them to take risk. He empowered them to make decisions and try to move a project forward. The third thing was he held them accountable for the outcome. And then the final piece of all of it is that he told them they made a difference. Win or lose, succeed or fail, you've made a difference. And so that's what the team acronym really comes out to be, right? It's trust, empowerment, accountability, and making a difference. And when people
Famous.
feel that
Sorry.
they have all of those elements, they feel
Mm.
trusted, they feel empowered, they're held accountable, and they feel as if they are making a difference. That's what keeps the team motivated.
Yeah, it sure does, and they're defining what success looks like. There's a famous story with Thomas Edison where he was, I believe it was a light bulb, and it was years, and it was 2,000, iterations, and they're like, "Did you make it yet?" And he said, "No, but we have 2,000 ways that don't work." So we know we'll not make those mistakes again. Try change.
One of my favorite sayings is always make new mistakes.
Ah, yeah. Yep. And yeah, where they say fail quick, right? They say fail
Yes,
quick and
yes.
yeah.
Fail quick,
Uh,
fail often.
right. Yeah. Try changing the position of your desk or working in a different room when you feel off. Sometimes just a change of perspective is all it takes to lighten your spirits. Of course, when I read this, I thought of Carpe Diem, right? Robin Williams when he stood up on the desk and in the what's the movie there? The prep school. It'll
Yeah,
come to me. Um, but anyway, changing the desk, changing perspective can make all the difference. One
and
of
it's
your
true.
challenges.
Yeah, it's true. Again, sometimes you just gotta get up, walk away from something, and look at it from a different angle. And looking at things from a different perspective, even if it's literally just changing your environment, can make all the difference in the world. Sometimes I'm sitting here and I'm getting into a brain fog working at my desk, and I'll pick up the laptop and I'll take it outside, and sit on the porch for a little while and just
Mm,
listening to nature and the birds and the occasional motorcycle going by or whatever, little traffic thing, whatever. That little bit of distraction and changing the environment, all of a sudden, new things, new inspiration comes to mind. But there's and I'd love to share this with you. One of the things that I teach about perspective is sometimes you don't have all the information when you're looking at it in one direction, right? So there's this classic example that I love to use, and it's a box, and inside the box there's an object, and you don't know what that object is, okay? But you're trying to figure out what it is, and you're going to handle that box and treat it based on what you think is inside of it. Now, there's a
mm,
little hole in the top of the box, and when you look down into that hole from the top, what you see is a circle. And so your brain says, okay, what's in there is a circle or a ball or a globe or something round. So I want to be careful how I handle this. Now, unbeknownst to you, in the side of the box, there's another hole. And if you look in that hole, or somebody else looks in that hole, what they're seeing from their perspective is a triangle. So in their mind, what's inside of this box has got a sturdy base, and it's probably, a pyramid or something along those lines. It's not until the two perspectives come together, the circle from the top, the triangle from the side, that you realize that what's in that box is a cone,
mm,
because you can't see the whole picture looking at it from one
mm.
direction. And so that's the same, and you apply that in the workplace as well, or anything else, right? That's the importance of getting perspective from others, because you may not see the whole thing.
Very good, John.
So whether you change your position to look at something differently, or you get the input of others who are seeing things from a different perspective, that will help you with that perception. And then you can actually make a more, solidified decision based on all the information that you have, or you can see
Mm,
things differently.
I was at a festival once and there was this painter up on stage and he would paint with his feet, with his toes. So it was a big, I don't know, 6 by 6, I would say. And he was with his toes in the brush, dipping in the paint, and he was painting. And he had a big, this was back in the 90s. So back then we had these boom boxes, right? The
Yeah.
kids won't know what we're talking about. But anyway, a big box that played music loudly. And and he had like Janis Joplin on and he had Jimi Hendrix and the Doors and
Ah,
and he
great
was for like
stuff.
yeah, for like 20 minutes he was painting and John, it was we couldn't understand what the heck he was drawing, what he was painting. It was just terrible. And it was all done and we're all just, we want to be polite. And he turns to everybody, and there's hundreds of us in the crowd. And he goes, sometimes you have to look at things differently. And then he gets the painting and he spins it completely upside down. And it was a perfect drawing of Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and John Lennon and Jim Morrison. He just painted it upside down. And his point was when you look at things, sometimes you have to change perspective to really see the beauty. And
Yes.
it was wonderful.
Yes. I've seen videos of that artist. He is amazing. And I look at there are so many artists out there that do this now. Um
Mm.
and they'll just go and they'll just start swatching paint on there, and you're going, what is this mess that they're doing, right? It's, oh, I'm not into that. It's kind of abstract art. And then all of a sudden they get done and they turn it over, and oh my goodness, it's a portrait or whatever. And so it is so amazing to me. How do they visualize that in the
Mm.
brain in the first place to start bringing all that stuff together? That is a fresh and new perspective right there.
Wonderful. Yeah. When corrective actions are needed, retain your humanity respectfully and with the other person's best interest in mind. Another one of your challenges.
Yes. Yes. So this one is so critical. This is all about feedback, right? When you've been criticized by somebody, or, what if you said, "Hey, what is that piece of crap you're painting over there, dude?" Right?
Mm.
Um, Giving feedback with a sense of compassion and empathy and understanding is really, really critical. No matter how badly somebody has screwed up, they're still a human being, right? And we need to treat each other with that humanity. There's a there's an old proverb that says if you live long enough, everything will happen to you,
Hmm.
which is kind of a bizarre way of thinking of things. But basically it's saying at some point in your life, in some story, you will be the hero.
Hmm.
In another adventure, in another story, you may be the victim. And in yet a whole other episode, you may in fact be the villain in someone else's story. And so, at some point in your life, you'll have money, you won't have money. You'll have food, you won't have food. You'll have, stuff, whatever. You'll be healthy, not so healthy. The longer you live, if you live long enough, you'll experience everything that life has to offer. And you don't know where other people are and what they're
Mm.
experiencing in their life at that time. And so that's why we need to really keep that in mind. Like, we don't know what's going on. We don't know why this project turned out the way it did. We don't know where the point of failure was. So let's keep that compassion and understanding there. And when we give feedback, instead of criticizing and putting people down, let's try to understand they may be in a really tough place at that moment.
It's very true. We don't know. We don't know.
You just don't. One of the
Commit to
things
be
that I like
sorry.
to talk about, Joey, is the fact that so many times we look at another individual and we are looking at the differences between us, right?
Mm.
Um, they're male, they're female, whatever. Whatever we are, we're looking at what's different about them, and that goes back to there's a perception that we actually
Hmm.
make a decision about people within 5 seconds of encountering them. Right. 50% of what we think about an individual, we decide in that first 5 seconds. So if you
Wow.
think about that, you're walking down the street and somebody's walking towards you on the same side of the sidewalk. You're within 5 seconds, you're going to determine, are you going to step to the side and let them pass? Are you going to stay your course and make them go around you? Or are you going to cross the street and avoid them altogether?
Mm.
And you've made that decision in just 5 seconds, because we're so critical to
Mm.
look at other people and make decisions about them and make predictions about them. But really, if we just stop looking at what's different about the other people, let's look at what we have in common,
Mm.
right? If we go to a ball game, or uh, a show or a concert or whatever, they're not all middle-aged white dudes out there, right? There are people from all walks of life there. They're all different colors, all different religions, all different whatever, but we're enjoying the same music. We've got something in common right there. Stop looking at the
Mm.
differences. Hey, you know what? I'm a Giants fan. You might be an Eagles fan. That doesn't mean we hate each other, because we both like football. We have something in common. So stop looking at the differences between us and look at what we have in common. If we do that more often, maybe we'll have a little less conflict in the world and actually can get along better.
Yeah, the way a lot of things are set up, politics, etc., they're just built to it's them versus us. It's
Yes,
it's it's
especially
it's too,
nowadays.
yeah,
We
it's terrible.
become so
It's terrible.
divisive.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrible when it shouldn't be that way because we have a lot more in common than we do. I mean, I can get along with Eagles fans John, I can do it. I could do it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure you could say
absolutely.
the same about the other way, but sure, I could do it. And that's a joke, of course. But yeah, we have a lot more in common. We all want to be healthy. We all want our loved ones to be safe. There's a lot more in common. Another one of your challenges: commit to being fully responsible for whatever you do. Your successes and your missteps, your accountability will serve as an example and earn respect. So similar to what we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's another one that goes back to when I was talking earlier about choices, right? When we look at the behaviors of other people around us, we decide which of those behaviors to emulate, right? I think
Mm,
about the bosses I worked for. I think about my parents and my relatives and friends and the way they behave about different types of things, and I decide which of those things I'm going to emulate. Which of those behaviors am I going to take on? Which of those opinions am I going to share? And so, in excuse me, in understanding that we have choices to make about how we are going to behave. A lot of people have excuses. Oh, I was, I was this. I didn't have access to that. I was abused. I was this. There are a lot of different things, horrible things that have happened to people in life. We don't have to be lessened by the things that happen to us.
mm,
We have a choice of how we're going to react to those things. So everything is a choice, and it goes back to the decisions we decide to make, and the choices that we make to get there.
mm.
Even when we have limited options, we still have choices.
Yeah, we still have choices. Another one of your acronyms I enjoy is torch.
That's my principal one. And that goes to when we talk about our motivation. And I think I started off talking a little bit about that before too. And I talk about how we all have kind of that inner drive, that inner fire within us, right? And that fire is uh, is what keeps us going in times of adversity. It's what makes us decide that we want to take on a hobby or play a sport or do anything, right? If we want a certain job, we're going to do a good job because we're motivated to do that. It's because something in there has hit that little fire inside of us, that little torch. And so the fuel for that fire, the pieces that we need, again, we start off with trust. Trust is the number one thing, right? We have to trust each other. We have to trust ourselves. So that trust is probably the most important factor. The second factor, or the second piece of fuel for being motivated, is having opportunity and feeling like you actually have that opportunity to make a choice and to do things. The third is respect. And that is so critical. Um, just being respected as an individual, being respected for the skills that you bring to a job, right? You went through a whole hiring process, and they hired you because of your skill set, and then they want to micromanage you. Well, they took away the trust right there. They didn't give you an opportunity, and they don't respect your skills. The
Yeah.
third piece of all of this is communication. Oh, the fourth piece of all of this is communication, right? You need to have communication up, down, across. People need to clearly communicate what the expectations are. You need to clearly communicate, what did I run into a roadblock? Is there a boundary here? Is there a problem? Or are you excited? I'm excited about doing this. I can help this. And hey, here's some ideas. Hey, here's that perspective from the side. I'm seeing a triangle and not a circle.
Mm,
So all of those things kind of come together, but the ability to communicate back and forth and up and down and all that is really an important piece. And then the final element that keeps us motivated is making sure that we've got that humanity piece, and humanity being understanding that we're not just our job, right? We are our whole life. There are so many things going on in people's lives that make us a whole person. right? So we need to be treated with compassion and humanity. So there's my acronym for that torch, that inner fire, and that is trust, opportunity, respect, communication, and humanity. And like I said, that's what keeps that inner fire torch burning and helps us to share that fire with others. And there is, for anybody watching the video version of this, is the
Yes.
cheesy dad magic that I throw in there to help illuminate that point.
Yeah, you're good at sleight of hand, actually. I watched a couple videos of you with that. It was really, really cool. Yeah, I that's a great it's a great acronym. I really enjoy that. And the last part, humanity, it's
Yeah.
really kind of taken for granted, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. So that's usually the piece that gets lost.
Hmm.
If you think about it, right? In the especially in the workplace. A lot of times people are looking at that bottom line. But if you really think about it, it's that critical human element that is going to make a business successful or not. I love to use, because I'm a double X Adonis and I'm a real foodie. I love to use a restaurant analogy, right? If you go to a restaurant where they got the best food in the world, but the service is, rude, you're going to go back there? Probably not. But I will go over and over again to a place with mediocre food, but where the service is fantastic. Like they recommend,
Hmm.
"Hey, John, how you doing tonight? Are you hungry? Hey, I recommend the short ribs tonight," or whatever. They start to know your taste. They understand you. They treat you like a human. That human connection, that humanity element is going to keep me going back to that place over and over again. I'm going to be a loyal customer. The same thing with any other business line. No matter what business you're in the people business. We started to talk about that before.
Oh.
You have to rely on people to sell your product, to deliver your product, to maintain the roads that the trucks are going to go on to
Mm.
deliver your product. So people are involved at all aspects. And there was a soul, I don't know when it actually started, maybe back in the early 1920s. There was a whole thing about, customer service, and customer comes first. The customer is always right. And that's really a misnomer,
Hmm.
because the most important people are not your customers. It's your own employees,
Hmm.
because they're the ones representing your product and your company to the public and to your customers.
Hmm.
So there's a great book out. It came out a number of years ago, and it's called "The Customer Comes Second."
Hmm.
And it's all about, if you don't take care of your staff, if you take care of your staff, they'll take care of your
Hmm.
customers. But if you
Hmm.
don't take care of your staff, they will take your customers. And
Hmm.
I've done that, right? I've gone to another restaurant when my favorite server decided to leave that restaurant and go work at another restaurant. I started going to that other restaurant just because I knew she was there. I went to a different hair salon because the stylist that would deal with my mop, had moved on to a different location. So I went with her. I didn't stay with the same salon. I went with where that service provider was that I like. So the same thing, I've worked with companies where there was an employee that I dealt with, uh, and they went somewhere else, and so I took my business to that new place because of the human connection, that humanity piece that is also critical. And that all of that goes back to feeling like you matter, right? Because when you're treated with humanity, you feel like you matter and that you make a difference.
Humanity.
It's
You
full
know,
circle.
in the '90s, I started my tech business, John, and I wasn't paying attention to myself, and I was working 16-hour days. You're very familiar with this. You work hard, and you're with your own business, and before you know it, I gained a lot of weight. I was up to 340 pounds. The doctor said to me, if you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. She had just been born. So I took the, next year and a half to lose about 130 pounds. And so when people ask me
I
how
found
I
it
did it,
if you want it.
yeah, yeah,
I
that's
will
right.
Gladly return
Well,
it to you.
they ask me how I lost it, like there's some quick answer, some magic bullet, and I just say discipline, right? I got focus, I got discipline. That's how I lost it. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life.
I'm going to go back to uh, early on. I told you what I was like in high school, right? I was this little
Small guy, yeah.
scrawny, uh, underappreciated person, is how I felt anyway. I finally developed a little bit of self confidence in the disco era. Tell
That's
you
right.
how
You're a
old I
disco
am.
dance instructor. Yeah.
I learned how to disco dance because I was tired of watching everybody else get the dates and I wasn't, because they all could dance. I said, "Darn it, I'm going to learn how to dance." And I hung around with a really good-looking guy who, all the girls were attracted to him, and so he can only dance with one at a time, so there was always an
Right.
extra one that I could dance with, and they would say,
Smart.
"Okay, fine, I'll dance with you for now until he's free." And so so then I would get out there and I would kind of bust out the moves that I had been kind of practicing and learning, and all of a sudden it was like, "Hey, this dude can move." And then somebody else would come over and say, "Hey, how'd you do that? Can you show me how to do that?" And I evolved. So I started to develop a little bit of self confidence there. But and I developed into a real night owl, uh, to the point where I was doing lots. I was a bartender, I was a roadie with a band, I was a disco dance instructor, I was a stand-up comic. None of these are the kind of jobs that you keep forever, unless
Right.
you're, the Seinfelds of the world or whatever. Um, but all of them really were nightlife. And so I was used to coming in the morning when most people were getting up to go to work for a responsible day job. And so I realized that I actually had a problem. I couldn't hold a day job. I actually started life, my working life, my real working life, as an electronics engineer.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I could have come and worked for you. No, um, but my problem was that I couldn't get up in the morning to get to work on time. So I had a real problem. I had no discipline in my life whatsoever at that particular point in my life. And I said, "Man, I've got to do something," because I could not hold down a job. I went back to school for journalism, and I started off doing freelance journalism because I enjoyed writing, and I couldn't get a job on the newspaper staff, and I kept losing, um, the opportunity to get jobs even as a freelancer, because I couldn't get to the site on time when the
Mm.
news was over by the time I got there. And so I had no discipline. And so I actually said, I need to train my body to get up in the morning. And I've got to fast force myself to do that. And the only way I can think about doing that is to have some drill sergeant or whatever just jumping down my throat and getting me up in the morning. So I
Oh.
joined the military as a way to try to train my body and get some discipline in my life to get up in the morning.
Hmm.
Now, I will tell you, I joined the Navy. I spent 25 years in the Navy between active and reserve time. Um, and I'll be honest, I still can't get up in the morning.
Really?
I'm still I'm still a night owl. It didn't help very much, but at least I do get to work on time. But and I get to where I'm going on time, and I get online on time, and I do, get to my speaking gigs on time, and I usually come in the night before to make sure I'm there on time. So, we
Hmm.
do what we can to do. We understand our foibles, and we do what we can to create that discipline to get us where we need to be in life. So, but yeah, that was how the discipline kind of, yeah, I joined the military to actually try to get discipline in my life. That was an extreme. A lot of my friends said, "John, you'll never make it in the military. There's no way.
Really?
No way." I had somebody bet me $500 that I could not do it. By the way, he still owes me that money.
Wow.
But
Fascinating. So while I'm sure you were taught discipline in other areas, right? I mean, making your bed. I mean, everything that the
oh
discipline.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
those
yeah.
kinds of things. Yeah, yeah. Structure.
Oh, very much so. Very much so.
Yeah.
The whole military regimen is very structured. So there was a lot that I had to learn there. A lot about responsibilities. And then when I went to my first Navy ship, I was the only journalist on board. And so I went in the Navy as a Navy journalist. And so I was running 2 TV stations, 2 radio stations. I was
Wow.
doing the shipboard newspaper. I was doing all the press releases out to the public media. I was the media spokesperson when we had media queries. I was the speechwriter for the commanding officer, the ship's photographer. And when the ship pulled into port, I put on my tour guide hat and became the community relations guy and did tours of the
Jeez.
ship and community visits and all of that stuff. And it was just this broad spectrum, everything you can possibly think of in the communication field. And if I was not on time, things would fail.
Mm.
So I really learned a lot about that. And of course, your uniform had to be clean and crisp and pressed and all of that stuff. And when it was inspection time, everything had to be spotless clean. And so there's
Mm.
so many things that you have to learn, and a lot of it is about just discipline yourself to fall into line with those things that are expected of you,
Mm.
and that make a difference. Now, I will tell you, there are some things that it's harder for us to become disciplined about. And that's when we don't necessarily agree with the necessity of the outcome,
Mm.
right? Like, I still to this day see absolutely no reason to make the bed at the end of the day, because I'm just going to unmake it at the end of the day and get into bed. However, I do admit that when that bed is nice and neat and crawling into it at night, it's a lot better than crawling into a bed that's all rumpled. So I do, when I think about it in a different way, I do find the necessity for it. But actually making the bed every day, even though my mother made me do it in the house when I was growing up as a kid, that was my responsibility. When I went into the military, I'm like, I'm not going to do this. Oh, I got to do this too. Don't they have people for this? But those are things that we learn as we go through life, right? You start learning about all these different. I think what it comes down to, I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. What it comes down to is realizing that other people are counting on you.
Mm.
So if I didn't make my bed correctly, or if my uniform wasn't squared away, I wasn't the one who suffered. It was the whole division who suffered
Right.
in the inspection, right? You get gigged on the inspection, and your whole team got gigged on the inspection. It's just like when you're in a sports team and you fumble that ball, the team loses the game, right? Everybody suffers if you don't do your part. And so that's where the discipline really comes in, is understanding you got a level of responsibility to other people, and they're going
Mm.
to suffer if you don't do your part. So you learn to get disciplined and do the things that are expected of you, that do the things that other people are relying on you to do.
Mm. Structure and accountability.
And that goes back
Yeah.
to the trust factor too.
And the trust as
Right?
well.
Because they trust you to do your part, just
Yeah.
like I trust them to do their part,
Team.
because I don't want to suffer if somebody else screws
Mm. John Verrico, what motivates you?
up. People. And I know that sounds really weird and kind of corny, but that's exactly it. Actually, helping people motivates me. When I get a message from somebody who says, "Hey, that thing that you said, that made a difference for me."
Mm.
I got a LinkedIn message a few years ago from a young woman that I vaguely remembered having worked with in the same organization 15 years prior. Hadn't had much contact with her in all that time, and we didn't work closely together. But she reached out to me on LinkedIn. She goes, "So I'm so glad I found you. I've been wanting to thank you for 15 years." I'm like, "Thank me for what?" And she said, "We were standing in the hall and we had a brief conversation, and I didn't think I was a little miffed about this job opportunity that had come up, and I was being overlooked and not being qualified, and I didn't think I really had the qualifications, and so I wasn't gonna." try to fight to put in for it, and you encouraged me to do so, and you pointed out some of the things that I could do that would address those concerns. And so I actually went back and I did those things, and I got the job. And ever since then, I've been, I've had the career of my life. I've been traveling around the world. I'm handling multi-million dollar projects, and I'm doing that because of that conversation, because you took the
Wow.
time to chat with me. That is what motivates me. When I'm talking to a group or when I'm doing one-on-one coaching, and that there's somebody that just gets that little glint in their eye that says, I struck home, right? That I hit a point, that they saw the light. That is what motivates me, because I know that they're not going to feel like I was meant to feel back in high school, that they have now achieved whatever it was they were trying to achieve, or at least have a path towards that. And so, as corny as it sounds, that is actually what motivates me. I tell people that, I would do this stuff for free, except I've become accustomed to those minor luxuries like food and shelter. So I do have to
Yeah.
actually charge for my services, but that truly is what motivates me. Every person that is able to get out from under a bad situation, that I was helped that I've helped to do that, that's what motivates me.
It's hard to measure the reward of friends and colleagues and acquaintances doing well, and having even the smallest percentage of assistance with it is just so rewarding.
It's
So rewarding.
exactly, what you do here, Joey, with your podcast, right? I mean, you're helping people to open up. You're providing, guidance and inspiration for your listeners. People are getting, they're listening to the people that you're interviewing, and they're going, ah, I never thought of it that way. I'm seeing something from a different perspective. I
Mm,
just have a new idea. I, hey, I was going through that same kind of challenge, and all of a sudden they can find, a new path forward. So, you and I are in the same on the same path in
yeah.
in that aspect.
Looking for that aha moment.
Yes.
How do you
And
measure
they're out there.
success?
I'd love to say, I'm doing okay. I'm working on my second million. But that's because the first one didn't work out, so I just started over. It's not about money. It really is about the impact that we have on other people. And so when I get a smile from somebody,
Yeah.
there's a success.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's that small. I have a very low bar, but if I can get a smile, if I can get a chuckle, if I can help somebody feel better, that's my success. So they're little incremental pieces here and there, and every one of those things says to me that I'm being successful.
Yeah, well said, John. Absolute pleasure. I'm so glad you accepted this. I love your story. I love what you're doing. I love how you're helping people. Uh, People want to know, how can we get in touch with you, but I do want to mention that you did co-author "Cracking the Rich Code."
Yes, yes. Thank you for bringing that up. So, cracking the rich code, volume 10, by the way. It's a big series. With Jim Britt. It's uh, endorsed by Tony Robbins, which was
Yeah.
just super exciting for me. But yes, I just wrote a chapter in the latest book in volume 10, and that chapter actually is about our legacy and what we'll be remembered for. So it's called Cracking the Rich Code, but it's not just about financial wealth. Although some of the authors did write about financial wealth, some people wrote about spiritual wealth, and I chose to write a chapter that talked about our legacy and what we'll be remembered for. And it's all about our relationships with others and our impact on other people.
Exactly what we talked about
So
today. Yeah,
now
it's
that
just,
book can be gotten from Amazon, but
but
know that if you get the version from Amazon, you're not getting the version with my picture on the cover. All the co-authors in that book have a special edition that has their picture on the
ah,
cover. So if people order it directly from me, they'll get my ugly mug on the cover, and I'll even autograph it for them.
and of course, your website, johnverrico.com, JOHN, Verrico with two R's, one C, Verrico. And I'll make sure to put it in the show notes. And of course, you're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest. You're all over the socials.
I am, and I will say, you talked about those challenge calendars. I put out these calendars every month, and then every
Yeah.
day elaborate on that particular day's challenge. And so all of those calendars are on the website, and they're completely free. You can just go and download them off of my resources page.
Very cool,
So
John. Thanks so much for your time. If I'm ever in your neck of the woods there in the greater Pennsylvania area, maybe we'll get a cup of coffee.
I would love to do that, Joey. Absolutely. I think it would be great. There's actually some pretty good coffee shops here, and they're locals. They're not like, the Starbucks of the
Chains.
world. They're the local places, so they do it right.
Very cool. Thanks so much, John. You be well.
Can I do one last plug?
Of course.
So I also have started with a colleague of mine in the UK. Her name is Annalisa Landa, and she is a values coach. And so we started a podcast. We only have
Oh, that's right. You're a
two
coach.
episodes out there right now,
Right.
and we're working on getting the next couple up. But it's called A Show of Values, and so it's all about how our core values influence our decisions and the things we do in life and the people that we have in our life, and what we do when we find conflicts with our values. And we look at news stories and advertising and people's experiences all through the lens of values. So if you're interested, please check it out, subscribe. It's called A Show of Values. And we're
Absolutely.
on all
And
the platforms too.
I'll make sure to put a link in there as well. Thanks again,
Excellent.
John. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. You be well.
Joey, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations.